Alright, here we go. Here's our next lecture. This is lesson 3, so make sure that you did the first 2 lessons before you do this one. Again, it goes right in order on Google Classroom. So, transitioning to War in the Pacific. So, last one was on D-Day, and then we're going to go back to the Pacific. So this is kind of where we're at now in your guided notes. So hopefully you have them. If not, just jot these down somewhere. I think on the first lesson I put a copy of the guided notes in case you need to copy that up, print it off at home, or have your parents do that from their work. You can do that. Also, I don't know if you guys got the memo from the school, but you'll have opportunity to come up to the school on I think Tuesday and Wednesday to grab stuff from your locker, so you can grab all this stuff if you need it. All right, so as we discussed before, a couple units before we left, with island hopping, we won Midway, we won the Leyte Gulf, so we're inching our way closer to Japan now. So the Battle of Saipan and Guam, here's Guam right here. So notice we are way over here, we won some battles, now we're inching our way closer to Japan. Here's the Philippines there as well. So U.S. brings 15 battleships. Japanese have 546 planes, and well over half of those planes are shot down. Again, at this point, as we left on Wednesday of last week, before all this stuff started going down, we were basically talking about how, the Battle of Midway, the Battle of Guadalcanal, Battle of the Coral Sea started kind of making the beginnings of the end of the Japanese. They lost many of their ace pilots. Aircraft carriers, Midway 4 were destroyed. At this point, Japan was not able to go on the offensive anymore. A lot of their planes were shot down, and the industrial this thing working? Yeah, there we go. The industrial might of Japan, they didn't have the same capabilities that we did. If we lost an aircraft carrier, we can produce a few more. They couldn't. They didn't have that capability just quite yet. So they can't replenish their air force for the rest of the war. So here's the moral of the story, guys. When you guys understand, as we get closer to Japan, the wars get more brutal. The Japanese get more desperate because they want to protect home. And if they're in Guam or they're in the Philippines, they're in Iwo Jima, they're going to fight to the death. They're going to amp up kamikazes, the suicide missions in the airplanes. They're going to do banzai charges. They're going to go any last-ditch resort they have to do in order to keep the Americans away or create as much casualty as they possibly can. Long story short, the Battle of Saipan and Guam, we're going to take the islands by July. It got to the point where the Japanese civilians are going to kill themselves. They're going to jump over cliffs. They're going to hide in tunnels because they don't want to be captured by the evil Americans. Again, it's all propaganda, what these countries are telling about us. Just like what we did to the Italians, what we did to the Germans, we portrayed them as being evil. So again, not being captured alive. So the civilians just jumping over cliffs, hiding in tunnels to hide from Americans. Things are pretty brutal. And then going back to the Leyte Gulf, the Leyte Island, Philippines. So remember we talked about this way back when. Douglas MacArthur, General, 1940. A few days after Pearl Harbor, the Japanese are going to invade the Philippines. And a few months later, Douglas MacArthur's going to have that famous speech, "I shall return." Well, 4 years later, here we go, October 1944. He's going to make it back to the Philippines, and as he's a picture of him stepping back on the island, "I have returned." So he will fulfill that promise. But again, one of the big advantages that the Japanese are going to have is that they're already dug in. They had time to build tunnels, networks all throughout the islands. The jungle, they had ample opportunity to find hiding places. You can see this little foxhole in here, but they're hiding all over the jungle, and it's hard for us to see them. So again, these islands are going to be brutal for us to try and take over. It's going to be like basically hand-to-hand combat, going through jungle-like atmospheres. Can't see the enemy. US has used flamethrowers to take out these pillboxes here that are all over the islands. Again, 424 pilots here are going to use their plane as suicide bombers. They're going to sink 16 U.S. ships and damage over 80 others just in the Philippines alone. So the Battle of the Leyte Gulf, the Philippines, was a naval defeat for the Japanese. Again, they really don't have any way to really defend themselves or to win a war. Their goal is to try to create as much damage on the American forces as they possibly can. So at this point, the Japanese, their navy's going to play a very limited role now from this point forward. They just don't have the battleships or aircraft carriers to really fight, um, a very offensive war. So again, the war started in October here. We'll take the island by December, and U.S. troops are going to continue pushing north. So if you look back to your map, the Philippines is down here, Japan. So here's the Philippines. Japan's up here. So we're going to start pushing our way north now to get to Japan. 13,000 U.S. soldiers were killed, 49,000 Japanese. So it's going to be a very common theme for most of these battles, as you'll see. The Japanese are going to experience a lot of casualties, where we are too, but not quite to that level. All right, so Iwo Jima. This is a very famous picture. You'll see this when you guys go to D.C. This is on Mount Suribachi. 6 Marines going up to Mount Suribachi, planting the flag. Think about what this photo is supposed to represent, victory. When this photo comes back to America, it makes us portray like we're winning the war, that things are going well. And the U.S. government is going to send this photo throughout the newspapers all across the United States. They're going to use it as a propaganda technique to try and sell more Liberty bonds and raise money for the war. So by February 45, we just passed the anniversary of this. If you check my Twitter, I had a little something about this. But this is the last island before Japan. The closer we came to Japan, as I said, the harder the Japanese fought. Their goal was to kill at least 10 Marines before a Japanese was killed. That was their objective and goal. So Mount Suribachi was volcanic. Now, the reason why that's important is because the beaches are extremely tough to invade. It was dark. It was like a black, it's basically a black beach, very thick. So I think we're basically just trying to like run in quicksand. Vehicles were getting stuck as Americans were invading the beaches. Artillery, trucks were getting stuck. Tanks were getting stuck on the beaches. It was very tough to run and maneuver on the beaches. And what was interesting about this invasion, as you guys will see, if you guys watch this clip, on Google Classroom I attached a clip from Letters Home from Iwo Jima, and you'll see on how the Japanese had tunnels into Mount Suribachi that were dug in. So it was hard for us to see where they were even located at as they're shooting down on the beaches. But the importance of this is that we needed the air bases, the landing strips on Iwo Jima. So if we were going to, invade Japan, these airstrips were going to be a vital key for us to have a base to launch an invasion into Japan. So the fighting goes on for 4 more weeks after this famous picture was taken, and several of the men in the picture are going to die afterwards. So what the U.S. government does, they take the survivors from this photo and they bring them back to the United States, and they travel and they go across the United States and they do like reenactments of this photo to again raise money for the war. And a lot of these men didn't want to come back. They didn't, but they were forced by the government. Again, they needed money for the war. That was the big key at this point, at this stage. It's kind of showing you, here's an example of a tunnel, as you'll see all throughout Mount Suribachi. Here's like a diagram showcasing all the tunnel networks all throughout Mount Suribachi. So we ended up winning Iwo Jima. And then, as I said before, that gave us the opportunity to launch, to use the airstrips to launch missions into Tokyo. So this is when the fire bombing is going to start into Tokyo. So this is not the A bomb yet. We don't have it at this point from February to May. The A bomb is not done. It's not done till July. So at this point, we're planning on a full scale invasion. We believe that's our only choice. So basically, what these air bombing raids were meant to do was they were meant to soften Japan, hit their factories, manufacturers, basically just level these cities. You can kind of see in through here some of the pictures of that, some of the our airplanes dropping bombs and some of the cities. Guys, there were cities in Japan the size of Cleveland or New York City that were leveled. 60%, 70% of the cities just wiped out from our bombs. So basically from March 9th and 10th was the worst of it. But again, it lasted from February to May. 100,000 were killed. More people died. More people died through this in Japan than through the A bomb. Over 1 million people left homeless. 100,000 plus killed. That's even a generous estimate. Probably should be a lot more than that. 1,700 tons of bombs were dropped. Again, half the cities, if not more than that, were just leveled and destroyed. This cut their production. Factories destroyed, and kills much of their workforce. So essentially, Japan is defenseless, and food is going to go scarce. So a couple interesting stories about that, actually, in terms of the firebombing. Food got so desperate that people were breaking into the zoos and killing animals because they hadn't any would eat the animals because that was their only source of meat. The Japanese government were sending out pamphlets to teach their citizens how to catch grasshoppers and eat acorns because they had nothing else to eat. The Japanese were given the food that they have left over to their spirit warriors, to their fighters. So they weren't even giving them to the civilian population. So this is why some historians believe that we shouldn't have used the A-bomb, because these firebombing techniques were working. And again, they had no navy, so and the Air Force was basically cut out. So we basically had free reign over their airspace to just drop bombs at will. They couldn't stop us. But it came down to the Bushido, right? The code, never surrender. I mean, heck, we dropped the first A-bomb on August 6th. They still didn't surrender until we dropped the second A-bomb 3 days later. So that kind of goes to show, and in terms of them and their code and whatnot, was what they were, planning. But they didn't know that we had the A-bomb at first. So we'll talk more about that later. And then the last major battle was the Battle of Okinawa. This was April of 45. This was the last island from MacArthur's fleet. This is 340 miles from Japan. So you see this down here. Here's Okinawa here. Iwo Jima was a little further away, but Okinawa was right down here, and here's Japan. This was the largest amphibious assault in the Pacific Theater. Again, as I said before, as we get closer to Japan, this suicide missions get more frequent. They kill 5,000 of our sailors. They sink 30 per ships. They damage 300 others. Japanese are going to have tunnels all over the island. They fight brutally. They don't care about the death totals. They're willing to fight to every man, woman, and child on the island. So 150,000 civilians are going to die. The Japanese use their citizens as like shields, so they kind of blend in almost like guerrilla warfare. Soldiers steal their food to fight. Again, this is going to provide dramatic losses on both sides. Americans are going to experience a lot. So for those that have seen Hacksaw Ridge, that's Okinawa, where Desmond Doss, came out a couple years ago. That is Okinawa. Hacksaw Ridge is located on that island. So with the casualties here, it really began to make the Americans think, okay, well, if we invade Japan, like mainland Japan, if we're experiencing tens of thousands of casualties there, how many are we going to experience in Japan? And our early estimates were saying that if we were to invade Japan, it was going to cost us between 1 to 3 million Americans if we were to invade, who would have died. So that would have meant our invasion force, we would have needed 5+ million soldiers in order for this invasion to work. So that's why dropping the atom bomb, that was one of the reasons why we use it, was because the loss of life would have been devastating on both sides. You're talking about millions upon millions upon millions of people who would have died. Men, women, children, our military, and so forth. Okay. All right. So anyway, what you need to do now is you need to you can watch some of the videos that I have highlighted for you guys on this post. I think I have the scene of the Iwo Jima scene on Google Classroom, and there's an exit ticket for you to complete as well. All right. Thank you.